Welcome to One on One on God 101. Our guest today is, some people say, the greatest Big Brother house guest to ever play, win, manipulate. Just people say he's a genius. Dan Gheesling, winner of BB10. He was on BB14, where he came back as a coach, and at that time was the first ever returning player to be a runner-up. He lost to Ian Terry, Quack Pack. Dan, we have a lot of catching up to do. How are you?
Mrs. Chen, it's a pleasure as always. The decade may have changed, but our introductions are still the same.
All right, I'm going to get to the Mrs. Chen comment later, which still I love. I love you for doing that. Hilarious. Call back. But the first question we always ask every guest on the show is, what was your relationship with God growing up? Because I know you went to Catholic school.
Yeah. So I was raised Catholic. I went through all my sacraments, baptism, first communion, confirmation, and so I grew up Catholic. My grandmothers were very Catholic, and I think like my parents ended up getting divorced, and so it was like a little gray. But I always looked, in particular, my grandmother, she was 93. She was very much a guiding light in my faith, not so much in what she said, but how she lived her life. She was always at church, always volunteering, and didn't always preach to me, but I just looked at how she lived her life, how happy she was. And I'm like, there's something to this.
Is she still with us today?
No, she passed away, and it was like my grandmother's 93. She volunteered every day cleaning the church and never had any health problems, but she was always at peace. And there was like chaos and stuff going on, but she just had this air about her. And I always knew it wasn't by chance. That's how she was. She was very devout and taught me a lot.
So even though you grew up in the church, at what age and at what point in your life did you say, I actually want a relationship with God, not just because, I was told to as a kid?
Yeah. Because I think as a kid, you go to church every Sunday, you check the boxes, you go to catechism, you do all these things. But at some point, you're right, Julie, like you have to decide, is this for me or is this not for me? And I think for me, it probably came in college. I went to Catholic high school, and that reinforced some things. But when you get to college, like you're out there. That's like your first time in the real world. There's a ton of temptations. There's no rules. And for me, I always remember being in college, and I never really got into trouble too much because whenever things were crazy, and I'm like, okay, what was I taught to do? And I went to the Catholic church on campus at Michigan State University. And that kind of kept me together through college, because college is a tough time for anyone.
Yes. In 2008, you enter the Big Brother house. You end up winning it. And correct me if I'm wrong, was that the season? I have to bring this up, but
Yeah.
God forgives. And people who, like to nitpick and criticize. Was that the season you swore on your grandfather's cross? No, that was Ian Terry season. Remind me.
So the first time I think I like gave up my cross. The second time I swore on it. So, but I will say this: like coming off of Big Brother the first time, I turned 25 in the house, and I won $500,000, and I'm from the Midwest. $500,000 in the Midwest goes a very long distance as opposed to California. But even that was a challenge. It's like, I always loved the game and wanted to play it, but then you win, and then there's all these other things you deal with. And I feel like people that go through that in LA, like I got lost a little bit. And it's kind of like anytime I was in trouble or anytime I'm like, okay, what am I really doing here? Is my dream to win Big Brother? I did it. And now what? That's kind of when I looked back in on my faith, and I'm like, okay, there's things that we can do with this, and just kind of help me course correct in my life, because it's a different world out there in LA.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so then after you did it the first time, 4 years later, you go back in, and that's when you swore on your grandfather's cross. You give it away. Okay, so what did your grandmother watch, and what'd she say?
Yeah, my grandmother, who, she always said, there's a couple of things. One, she's like, you played really hard and it's a game. And it was kind of, she was the one person when I got out, I'm like, okay, what's my grandma going to say? And she understood it was a game. But she also is like, that's something you want to go to confession about. And, And so you do that, and I think there's a especially the second time I played, how I played really hard, and I think it rubbed some people the wrong way. But ultimately, for me, it's like I'm there to play a game and kind of play this character role, and it's not necessarily who I am in my everyday life.
Feel free to not answer this,
Yeah,
but I am dying to know how you reconciled with God. Like your grandma said, you have to go confess.
yeah,
And I'm not comfortable sharing that, but that's between you and God.
yeah.
But if you are comfortable sharing, like, what did you say to him?
Yeah, so and that's a thing for me, especially recently, as a father with 3 kids, and there's a lot going on, to me, when I go to confession, like I went last week and it had been a while, there's something for me, it's like there's this weight lifted off your shoulder where no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes, but within my, the Catholic faith, it's like you go and you say, here's what I did wrong. And no matter how bad it is, like there's forgiveness. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, doesn't matter how hard I work out or what I do, there's nothing to me that compares to when I walk out of confession. And it's like, man, I feel new and, forgiven.
Um, can I get back to the Mrs.
Yeah.
Chen?
Yeah.
All right. Be honest.
Okay.
Did you call me Mrs. Chen to butter me up? Like, oh, I'm
Oh,
gonna show her I'm a good Catholic school boy. I'm gonna call her Miss Chen. Like, tell me the logic, the
well,
thinking.
you have to remember, Julie, I watched Big Brother since I was a little kid. So it's like when I get the chance to, it still doesn't feel real, right? Like you get a chance to play for the first time, and I'm like, this is like royalty to me. It's like, I'm like talking to you through the diary room. I'm like, this is a big deal. And not going to call you by Julie. I didn't know you. And so I think from that first time, it was like, okay, like sign of respect. And then when you kind of corrected me, then it was like, all right, I get it.
All right, here's what I was thinking. I was tickled pink. I don't know how I reacted on TV because again, I'm, kind of performing also. But I guess what I should say is knowing you now and knowing, hindsight's 2020 and knowing you went to Catholic school, I do take it as a sign of this is how I was raised. So I chalk it up to you were raised properly. Even if you did lie about certain things, but in Big Brother, you're playing by the Big Brother rules. You're allowed to lie. It
Yeah. Yeah. I just, for me, it was such a dream to be able to play the game. I think there's a lot of different reasons for people going on Big Brother. But for me, it was always like, it was just a dream. And just to sometimes take a step back and be like, wow, I got to live my dream twice. It's a special game. And I just look at that time with so much fondness. Even like the first time I came out, it was nothing but adulation and a great job. And the second time I came out, you're like, oh, you're amazing, but also did you need to do that? And I get it.
Who are you still in touch with, if anyone? I know you're busy with raising a family and you have, a wife, but
Yeah.
do you keep in touch with anyone?
Yeah. I still talk to Memphis. Yeah. I talk to Brittany Haynes and I talk to Janelle. So those are the three because I feel like in this world, it's like summer camp. You go away, you connect with certain people and you keep in touch with others.
How's Memphis doing?
Memphis is doing well. It's amazing to me. My wife has family in Fort Lauderdale. Memphis lives in Fort Lauderdale, and we try to go down there during the winter. And there was a couple moments for me where my sons were playing with his sons, and I'm just like, this is really cool. But it's been amazing to see how great of a father Memphis is and how serious he takes it. Because this is a guy that, like, on the show we'd run around, mess around, and he takes it so serious. And there's a couple moments in my life where like I pinched myself. I'm like, man, my sons are playing with Memphis's sons, and in 2008, we just met each other.
Well, you know what I chalk it up to? Only God. God knew when, when we all didn't, that your children would be playing with Memphis's. He has one child, right? No.
Yeah, yeah, he has one son. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, so many blessings. Okay, this might sound like a strange question,
Mhm.
but would you say your experience in the Big Brother house twice, altered your relationship with God? Like, did it shape it somehow?
I think
Change it, advance it, anything?
I think what it did, I think it taught me some lessons that you heard about in Catholic school and then you heard about in the Bible. And it's like you go through that. It's like, okay, hey, you chase this dream, you win the show, you win this money, you get this adulation, and you're like, it's not really what it's not cracked up to what you think it is. And for me, it was easy to get, picked up and lost in that stuff. And I'm just very lucky. I have a well-grounded family that kind of pulled me back in. But I just learned that,
Are you
there's,
talking about pride by any chance?
yeah, like pride, and there's a lot of attention, and um, it just it kind of just put you in a position to say, all right, are these the things you want to chase? You want to chase money and fame because you're on the path and you've done it. You want to keep doing that? Or is there a greater lesson to be had here? And I just feel so lucky, Julie, that, I was able to like dip my foot in that world, have a lot of fun, learn from it. And then, Julie, in my everyday life, I'm a dad, I coach my son's little league teams, and it's not my life, right? Like even when I went on the Traders, like I got to go play this game, but then I go back to my normal life, and it's not, it's not something I chase after anymore.
I love hearing that. Since I like to put everything through, my Jesus lens,
Mhm.
what have you learned about judgment? Because a lot of, the Big Brother fans, they love to judge. And
Yeah.
I've been there. As a host, I've been one of those people before I knew Jesus. I'd be judging too.
Well, before I answer, I have a question for you, because I feel like there was like a moment where it was like, okay, we have Julie Chen on Big Brother, and then I don't remember when it was, but there's a moment when you're signing out, and it was a different sign out from you, and I'm like, we've never seen that before. So my question to you is, what caused you to do that? Because I even feel like, I'm gonna be honest, even in this interview, I'm a little uncomfortable because we don't necessarily talk about God and our faith openly. But for you to do that on CBS on a live show, like, why did you do that
Well,
the first
honey,
time? Yeah.
I'm glad you asked because, but first God, whoops, hold on. But first God really details it. But the elevator version to answer your question is in 2018, my life got turned upside down. And that's when I found God and my path with Him started. You can this is only an audio memoir. You
How do we
can't,
get it? How do we get it?
Amazon,
Okay.
anywhere you download audiobooks, you can download But First God. This happens to be a CD for anyone who still listens to CD. But in a nutshell, my walk with Jesus didn't really get deep until 2020. That summer is when you heard me sign off. My father died. God hit pause on the world, and I re-examined my life, and that's when it started. So thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I just saw it. I'm like, that takes a lot of, I mean, pardon my French, stones to be able to do that in a environment where that's like, you just don't do that. So I wanted to ask you because it's like, I'd never heard the answer before. You made a decision to do that. Did you get any pushback at all from doing
Oh,
it?
oh yeah, I want you to interview me about this. I got pushback, but ultimately, look, spoiler alert, God wins. And my girlfriend said to me, okay, approaching the final minute, my producer, a girlfriend said to me, Julie, stop struggling, just sign off, love one another. And no one can argue with that. And she is a deep, deep Christian. And that's when all the pushback stopped because God always wins. But I can tell you about the other pushback some other time. We're running out of time, Dan Gheesling. Okay, in the final 30 seconds, what do you want to promote?
You know what? I don't want to promote anything. I have to be honest. Like I asked my wife, I'm like, should I do this interview? And I'm just glad I did, because it's not something like, when I stream, here's all I'll pitch. I stream every day on Twitch, and it's a live broadcast. But, this is something I never talk about publicly. So, I think that in the right forum like this, I think it's probably helpful to people to know that, hey, there are people out there of faith, of varying faiths, and I think it's a great forum for people to kind of tune in on. I listened to the interview you had with Suri, and it's just interesting to see these like characters that are on TV, but wait, there is more than just this character on TV.
Dan Gheesling, you're a child of God. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.